everyone, welcome. So thank you so much for being with us here today, this afternoon. We're gonna have a very interesting webinar on self-compassion. And we've already asked a question here on the screen. Where we've been asking people, are you rate? Are you kind to yourself? Are you kind to others? Are you kind to yourself? And it looks here like more people strongly agree that they are kinder to others and then as opposed to the number of people who agree that they are kind to themselves. So we're going to be talking about that discrepancy a little bit more today in our self-compassion topic. So our topic for today is self-compassion, managing attachment fatigue. So just some reminders before we start. If you have a pen and paper, if you want to take notes, if you want to be able to reflect, it's nice to have that in handy. If you have another device, it would be great. But if not, just be ready to go to another link because we're also using Mentimeter to be able to engage you, just like what we showed you earlier. And although initially all participants will be on mute, we really want to hear your questions, your comments. Please type them in the chat box and we'll make sure to go back to them. And after this, you can get a certificate after answering the evaluation. So if there's an issue there, you can send us an email. I did receive that message from Jerome, so we'll check on that later. And very important, please write your full name sa certificate because it's an automated process. So for as long as you're able to answer the full evaluation, you should automatically get that certificate sent to your email. And just one more thing, I just really want to emphasize, although everyone will be initially on mute right now, there's going to be a point in the webinar where I'm going to unmute everyone. So warning lang, there's going to be a point where all the participants will be on mute just so you can participate in that particular exercise. So if you really, really don't want to be heard, just mute yourself again after it. And so here's how to open the chat box. So you just click, if you're on your phone, just click those three buttons, yung more, and then lalabas yung chat. Send to everyone so that everyone will see your message. Or if you're using a laptop, just click on that. The menu bar for Zoom, just click on chat. And then here's some nonverbal norms. If you really want to say something, you can actually raise your hand. So you click yung participants, and then lalabas yung nasa right, yung raise hand. You can click raise hand. And if we see that you're raising your hand, it means maybe you have something to say. So we will ask to unmute you. So you can ask your questions live, or you can ask it. You can ask it via chat, or you can ask it via your voice. So hello. Before we start, I'm Nikki. I'm the Chief Wellbeing Officer and the co-founder of Positive Workplaces. I studied my master's in counseling psychology in Ateneo, and that's where I really came across the work of NEF on self-compassion, which is what we're talking about today. But I've also studied a Master of Applied Positive Psychology at the University of Melbourne, and that really helped me explore more deeply yung topics in positive psychology and how we can apply it in the workplace. And with me here is our lead designer for this program. First, she's really passionate about self-compassion and sharing that message to more people. And what I really love about Chloe is that whenever she gets into a topic like self-compassion, it doesn't stay in the textbooks for her. She actually applies it in her life. And so I could really feel the depth in her design for today's webinar. So Chloe, say hi.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. Hopefully, those who are unable to join the Zoom call, please just join us on Facebook Live.
Yeah, we have a full house today, so you'll get to see the self-compassion design of this webinar that Chloe made. She's our Learning and Development Associate. She's studying AB Psychology and she has a minor in philosophy from Ateneo de Manila University. So we're really proud to have Chloe on the team and really proud to show you what she's designed for us today. So our learning roadmap today is going to be, first, we're going to talk about why. Why is acceptance the center of sustainable compassion? And then we're going to talk about the components of self-compassion. So what are those components? It's a concept we'll go deeper into by piecing it apart into components. And lastly, we always end with very pragmatic tips on our webinars. So we're going to talk about how we can use self-compassion personally and at work. We're going to teach you of like a couple of steps that you can apply wherever you go. And so we'll begin with why first. Why is acceptance the center of sustainable compassion? So compassion actually comes from the root of this word actually comes from two Latin words, which is com and pati. Com means with, and pati means to suffer. So compassion is actually in a way suffering with someone. It's not just your suffering, but you're accompanying someone through their difficulty, through their pain, through their hardships. So compassion in a way does necessitate that you extend yourself to another person. And so that can be really tiring, especially when you are going through a lot yourself. So we're going to be talking about why compassion is critical for you. Self-compassion is critical for you to be compassionate to others. And as much as we really hope that we could be Superman and that we could just save other people and do our best, to be honest, and when we're real with ourselves, we do get tired. No matter how motivated, no matter how hard we try, there are times when we get tired. There are times when we feel that we need to take a step back and rest, or there are times when we feel that we can't always expend ourselves fully for other people. So for us to become more super, we have to become more self-compassionate, and we'll show you here why. So first, let's make a distinction between pain and suffering. So pain is not the same as suffering. Try to imagine this story. I got this, like it's like a proverb that I got from somewhere. So imagine there was a snake, and the snake was going through this carpentry shop, and it was dark, it was nighttime. So the snake didn't see na habang dumadaan siya doon, daanan niya yung saw and it got cut by the saw. And the snake was so angry that it bit the saw. And then it got hurt even more because now it has internal wounds as well around the saw. And when it did that, it got hurt. And when it got hurt, it coiled tighter and got hurt even more, and it bled and it died. And so you can kind of imagine that pain, these are the unavoidable things. Pain is almost unavoidable in our lives. Sometimes you don't see the saw. You have your own version of the saw in your life. Sometimes things don't go your way because not everything is within your control. Sometimes you plan for a job and then you don't get it. Sometimes you work for a promotion and then you don't get it. Sometimes people are harsh, and that's difficult because you can't control those other people, and it does cause you pain. So pain is almost unavoidable because we do not control other people and we don't control the circumstances in our life. But pain is not the same as suffering. So some suffering results when we resist a lot. So for instance, one way that we resist is if something bad happens, we tend to take so much time into yelling out into the world, this shouldn't be happening to me, ang bait-bait kong tao, bakit ito nangyayari sa akin, bakit lagi na lang ako? Or sometimes we ask ourselves when we fail or something bad happens, what did I do to deserve this? What did I ever do wrong? Or like, how come these things only happen to me? And you can see when we resist in this way, we extend our suffering. So pain is unavoidable discomfort. Lots of things happen in life that are out of our control. Sometimes they're not what we hope for, it's not our preference. So there's a lot of things that we can't avoid. There's a lot of pain that is just really part of life, but pain is not equal to suffering. In fact, pain times resistance is suffering. So when you have unavoidable discomfort and you have that resistance or that effort to ward off pain, when you're yelling to the universe, it shouldn't be happening to me, or bakit lagi na lang ako, or bakit ako lang yung nahihirapan, when you resist that way, that's when you suffer. You suffer because you're adding that tension to your pain. And it's something that you can control, this resistance. It's this resistance of you resenting the world, of you hating everything that's happening, that comes from you. So resistance can actually come from this unholy trinity of suffering, and we'll show what this unholy trinity is. The first is self-criticism. For instance, when something bad happens to us, we get down on ourselves and we're really so critical of ourselves. Sometimes we tell ourselves, ang bobo ko kasi, or at kaya talaga magulo yung buhay ko kasi hindi ako maayos na tao, or you're very harsh and you're very critical about yourself. And you know, it's a lot of people are already very critical of us. We don't have to be extra unkind. We don't have to be unkind to ourselves. Another aspect of this unholy trinity of suffering is self-isolation. When you think that it's only happening to you, when you disconnect from this shared humanity from other people and you just isolate so much, that's self-isolation. When you think you're the only one that this happens to, when you think that you're the only one who receives the bad news, because the truth is all of us, our suffering is actually something that unites us sometimes. But if you think that it's only you who are suffering and you're isolating yourself from the rest of the world, you suffer even more. And lastly, the last part of this unholy trinity is self-absorption. Sometimes we think that things that happen to ourselves are just as big to the world as they are to us. Sometimes, for instance, nadapa ka, and then you think, oh my God, everybody was looking, everybody was laughing, everybody made such a commotion out of what happened. When in fact, nadapa ka, maybe some people laughed. 2 minutes later, everybody's over it. Ikaw na lang siguro minsan you're still holding on to it. Whether it's you tripping or something shameful happens, or something about you is spread to others, you think it's such a big thing. But actually, if you're not so self-absorbed, you realize it's much bigger to you than it is to other people. So compassion fatigue, it actually results also from believing that you're indispensable and feeling resentment towards those you're trying to help. So for me, the time of my life that I experienced the most compassion fatigue was when I was a teacher in a very difficult school with a very difficult section. I was teaching in an under-resourced school, and I knew that a lot of the students in my section were actually very difficult. So one day, I wanted to be nice. So what I did was I wrote handwritten notes to all of my students, especially to the ones who were being very difficult. And when I gave it to them, one of my students, he got the paper and he threw it out the window. And I think that was the day that I felt the most compassion fatigue in my life, because I was really like, how did you do this? I wrote that letter for you. You didn't even appreciate it. Like, I was telling all of these things in my head. I'm doing my best to be the best teacher that I can possibly be, but how come they're not receiving me well? How come they're not appreciating my kindness? And really, I got compassion fatigue from that, because I was holding on to this belief that I was indispensable, that I was the teacher who was going to save them from all of their suffering. I was a teacher who was going to lead them into good grades and the next year level. I believed that I was the only teacher who could do that. So I had this belief that I was indispensable, which is actually just my pride. And the next thing is, I felt resentment towards that student because I thought I was being kind, but the truth is, I secretly demanded something from my kindness. Secretly, I wrote that letter, but I was really secretly hoping that after I wrote that letter, my student is going to love me and my student is going to change for the better and my student is going to get good grades and that good grades will be attributed to me. And that's really just all my pride. So it wasn't genuine compassion. If anything, it was like a manipulative compassion so that I would feel better in the end. And that's not very generous. And that type of compassion, that believing you're indispensable and resenting others just because they didn't receive your help in the way that you wanted to, that leads to a lot of compassion fatigue. So I wonder who of you can relate. Have you ever maybe there's some people you can type in the chat box if you're brave and if you want to say, have you ever felt na you gave somebody advice and then you got so tired because after you told this person 10 times, hindi siya nakinig. He still did whatever like dumb thing that it was that you warned na dapat hindi gagawin, but they still did it. And if you felt really, really tired because this person was listening, you're probably experiencing compassion fatigue. Maybe secretly the advice that you gave, you wanted that person's obedience in exchange for your advice. But the truth is in life, you could be you would have so much more to give when you're not trying to take something out of that person, when you're not expecting and forcing that person to behave the way that you want them to. So yeah, that can happen to a lot of people. So suffering can also it can come from primary stress. That's like the stress that you have in your own life. Let's say you lost your job. That's primary, and you're having difficulties because of it. You're having difficulties making ends meet. That's primary stress. It can also come from secondary stress, which is watching the difficulties of others. For instance, when I watch the news and I see how much especially during the start of the pandemic, watching the news and seeing that a lot of frontliners couldn't get to work easily. When I saw that they were walking to the hospital or walking to the grocery, wherever they worked, I felt so much stress because of that. Even if I wasn't the one walking and suffering, just seeing the suffering of another person is really stressful. That's secondary stress. And if you combine a lot of those stresses, that actually contributes to burnout. And all of this, it can lead to compassion fatigue, where you feel, I don't want to care anymore. I don't want to, I don't want to extend my kindness and my empathy and my compassion this much to another person because I'm so tired. So you turn off the news, you stop helping people, you shut the stress out of your own life. All of that happens because you're feeling compassion fatigue from your primary stress and from secondary stress and that overall feeling of burnout. So we wear ourselves out when we're attached to the outcome of our hard work, such as success or recognition. And I think you would probably realize sometimes you work hard for a promotion and then you don't get it. You get tired more because you're attached. Sometimes you're not actually physically tired anymore, but you're tired because you expected something and you're attached to it and you demand and you have this internal demand that if I do this and this must happen to me. That's really quite tiring. So when we put a lot of effort in and then when we expect things to go a certain way but it doesn't, we don't get what we're attached to, we feel attachment fatigue. So do we really have to add to the suffering that we have in life? If you studied math, what we can do is, let's use that principle of math, because pain times resistance equals suffering. But if that resistance, we turn it to zero, anything multiplied by zero, if we all went to math, we all went to school, we all studied math, anything multiplied to zero becomes zero. So there's unavoidable discomfort in life. And if we make this resistance zero or this effort to ward off pain zero, then our suffering would be zero. And how do we make that resistance zero? What we can do is multiply our pain with self-compassion, that's accepting our pain instead of resisting it, then our suffering would be zero. And self-compassion, it really is the acceptance of ourselves while we are in pain. So we can bear witness to our own pain and respond with kindness and understanding instead. Instead of resisting and saying, why is this happening to me? This shouldn't be happening to me. Lagi na lang ako. Mag-isa lang ako dito. Why don't you just be a kind witness to your pain? And instead of being hard on yourself, criticizing yourself, just respond to yourself with kindness and understanding. You know, a lot of the times we don't realize even if we make mistakes, even if we fall short, we were already doing the best that we can given the resources that we have. So at that moment in our lives that we made mistakes, that we have regrets, that was already our best. And one of my favorite authors, Maya Angelou, she said, we if we know better, then we would do better. Diba? Like if you knew at that time how to be a better person, how to make better decisions, then at that time you would have done better. But at that time, you didn't know. You didn't have that insight. You didn't have the resources to do better. At that time, you were doing your best. And so if you were doing your best, then you can just tell yourself that, you know, you did your best. What you expected, but you know, you can try again. Or at that point, you were doing your best, and so whatever the outcome is, how can you fault yourself for that? How can you allow other people to fault yourself for that? You were already doing the best that you could. So going back to the question, why is acceptance the center of sustainable compassion? You can think of your compassion as a deep well. Your self-compassion is the water inside that well. So if you have self-compassion, then there's that water inside that well, you will be able to give it to others. If there's no water in that well, no matter if there's no self-compassion in you, no matter how many times you try to fetch some water, you will just get an empty bucket each time. So if there's no self-compassion, no matter how hard you try to be compassionate to others, you're just going to be resentful. You're just going to come up with an empty bucket, and people may not even be happy with the help that you're trying to give because it's so you're resentful, you hate what's happening. But if you start with self-compassion and you fill your own well with water, so self-compassion is that water in the well, then every time you reach into that and to pull out something you can give to others, you will be able to give others water. So you will have that water inside of yourself, and you will have that nurturing water to give to others as well. So it's if you want to be self-compassionate to others, if you want to be compassionate to others, you have to have that self-compassion as well. And in organizations, when people have self-compassion, where there is burnout, depression, resilience, and performance, you will see that burnout will actually decrease because people are not making that big of a deal of the mistakes that they're making. People are not magnifying the issues that are coming about. And there will also be less depression because people are not so hard on themselves. People don't get down on themselves so much anymore. And there will be greater resilience. People recognize what resources that they have to overcome stress. People have more resource. Self-compassion is such a big resource, a big buffer against stress or whatever difficulties happen in life. So people are actually more resilient. And because people have all of these resources and reduce difficulties, then there's a boost of performance in organizations. So if you have self-compassion, there's reduced burnout and depression and greater resilience and performance. And what organization wouldn't want that? So to lead us into this next segment is Chloe. So Chloe will be talking to us about what are the components of self-compassion. All right, Chloe.
Hello, everyone. So I guess we're sort of wondering how then do I even use this self-compassion, or what is self-compassion? We've showed you why it would matter for you to build this in yourselves, but we'll be talking about the components of self-compassion, which are Okay, so we have common humanity, mindfulness, and self-kindness. And common humanity, like what Nikki mentioned a while ago, we have this shared feeling of suffering. There are experiences that really unify us, that make us human, that at the end of the day grounds us all together and unites us as a one single front. And it counters that feeling of aloneness. And at the same time, we have mindfulness, which is a concept which is popular right now, and it's that ability to have present awareness and that recognize your moments of suffering are happening in the present, but it would not define what has happened in the past or what can happen in the future. And grounding yourself in that mindfulness helps you later on build that self-kindness. Self-kindness is that kind inner dialogue that you have with yourself that helps you fully accept the present moment that you recognize without the resistance, and giving you the ability to really respond with compassion. And as we go through the webinar, we're going to show you how you can actually apply that in your life. But in this segment, we'll be talking about each of the components so that you get a better idea on how you can apply them. So we can start with common humanity. Like some experiences you have, like what Nikki said, that we feel that no one can be feeling this much suffering. It's completely impossible that someone is having a difficult time like me. But actually, there is a common humanity that can unite us all together. And when we start to accept that my experience is very much like someone else's, it will give us much more ability to ground ourselves in reality and reach out to the people around us, understanding that that person made a mistake because she is human like me, or they are humans like me. Well, the next component is mindfulness. Excuse me. But I'll talk a little bit more about that. Remember a while ago, we talked about how we're so attached to the outcome of our success and our recognition that we feel this attachment fatigue. And it's typically because we think that we aren't supposed to make mistakes. That, as people, our worth is really anchored in how much we are able to do and how much we are able to accomplish, like what Nikki said a while ago. And we feel that fatigue in ourselves because of that attachment to that sort of worth. Whereas, for example, if we move forward from that, we're more likely to absorb that reality and respond well. At the same time, knowing that we are owners of our own deeds and other people are too. So it's their choice on how they make themselves happy or free themselves from suffering. We feel attachment fatigue because we think that we are given the responsibility to make these people better. We have the responsibility to make sure they're responding the same way as we probably would in the same situation. But then going back to that sense of common humanity, it's also recognizing that these people are like us, but they are also unique, because part of that whole common humanity thing is that we respond from different contexts, but the main context that we have can also be our uniqueness. But then moving on to mindfulness, this is such a popular concept because it really allows us to ground ourselves in the present. It signifies being present with one's thoughts and emotions in the moment. When we're going through something, we typically forget to give ourselves the time to feel the things that we feel. And I think one of the reasons why self-compassion is so strong is that it really gives us the ability to provide ourselves with a space in order for us to stop over identifying with the negative emotions that we might possibly feel. Let's say, for example, if I had mindfulness, I am less likely to say to myself, ano ba yan, I'm not comfortable with my presentation tomorrow because hindi ko alam ano mangyayari. Versus if I was in the past, I could have told myself, if I was focusing on the past, I would have told myself, I can't believe that I made that mistake before when I did my run through. And that would have consumed me in the present moment that I'm in. And when you provide that space for yourself in the present, you will be able to recognize that your this stress in the moment is current. So if I'll outline that word here that we underline current, it's knowing that what you're feeling now might not be the same tomorrow. You might be more confident today. You might be more scared tomorrow, and acceptance that that is part of how life is. Um, I think personally, I tend to forget that I have to be forgiving of myself. And I think it's because I'm too grounded in the future. I plan and plan and plan, and I try my best to be so intentional with everything that I forget to enjoy what's in front of me. I put myself in a situation that I'm so anxious. What are the next months going to look like with this pandemic happening? What am I going to do now with work? How would it look like if things don't pan out the way that we assume they would? And that's where that sort of distress or resistance for that pain comes from. But then when we ground ourselves in mindfulness, we're able to recognize what we can control within the given time and tell ourselves that it's okay if this is all I can control right now. And instead of telling ourselves that our negative thoughts or emotions define who we are right now, we're actually able to say, what I'm feeling is in the present, and I might feel better a few months from now. We never expect how much better our lives are going to get. A few months ago, I was not the happiest person, but then where I am right now, I'm so grateful because within my work in positive workplaces, they've really given me a chance to teach myself to do that, to ground myself in the present blessings that I'm able to get every day. And it gives myself more resources to respond to what can happen to me on a daily day basis. But I'd like to talk more about self-kindness because this is the one component I find myself really unable to do. Having that kind inner dialogue with myself feels so difficult because I find that my worth depends on how much I'm able to produce, which is wrong. That is self-criticism, which is part of the unholy trinity. But then when I was able to come across these components and I was able to really fully accept that my present moment is as it is, I was able to better respond to myself and have a kind inner dialogue because I was starting to respond to myself with compassion. It's so scary to make mistakes. And I feel like everyone in the room can relate to that feeling that a mistake makes you feel less than what you are worth. But once I saw that my mistakes don't define all the good things I was able to do over a long period of time of my life, I was able to really identify that I am more than this. One way to look at it is that you have to accept things for what they are for you to be able to change what you have to change. And that moment of acceptance is the first and most important aspect of compassion. Compassion isn't just saying, I know what you're going through. It's saying, I know what you're going through, and I know that once you understand what you're going through, you'll be able to do something about it. And giving myself more time for that really allowed myself to be more compassionate to people. I've learned to not respond in anger. I've learned to not snap just because something doesn't go my way, because I've spoken so much more kindly to myself and internalized that kindness that I don't have to force myself to be kind. It's just a natural reaction. And I feel like it takes so much time to work towards there, but hopefully by the end of this webinar, you'll sort of see how it's actually really doable. And one way that we can do is participate in this activity of identifying maybe which of the three in the chat box you can type it. Which one are you most likely to do? Personally, I self-criticize a lot. In self-isolation, we're likely to say, nobody understands what I'm going through, or I'm never going to be good enough in self-criticism, or it's all my fault. But then what if I told you using the three components, we can actually transform those words into things that you can use to help yourself cope with that. So if you guys can join us on Mentimeter. What are some unkind statements you have said to yourself so far during this pandemic? Can you please share to me how you've been speaking to yourself in the most unkind way? So you can join us in our Mentimeter. You don't deserve this good thing that is happening. That's true. You know that survivor's guilt that we typically feel when we're able to get good things in life when everything is going on so badly around us, or you're not good enough, or you should have done better. They will never appreciate what I do. Wala ka namang nagawa. I can't finish things. I can't get things done. That's true. I feel like I have said all these things to myself. And maybe let's just also spend this time for you guys to also vent what you've been telling yourself. Like giving you right now a safe space for you to say these things without feeling like this makes you less of a person. Maybe let's channel into that common humanity aspect. And I think you can see right now from all the statements in front of you that we all say these things to ourselves. We're all more likely to identify these unkind statements than we are the nicer things that we can say about ourselves. I think one thing that you might be able to relate to is being unable to take a compliment, because not being able to believe it's even true because you don't know how to be kind to yourself. So let's just go back here to the Mentimeter of some of the things that they're sharing. I'm incompetent, stop procrastinating, why are you so useless? All of the good things you've achieved are flukes, but hanggang dyan ka lang, ang hina ko naman. I feel like that I'm tired, but I have to stay alive. I failed again. You know, it really, being who I am, it really hurts my heart to see you guys say these things to yourselves because I don't think these are true. I don't feel like this sums up who you are as people in the room or the people watching us right now. And I'll give you guys a few more minutes to really share your thoughts to us before we move on to the next segment. Lagi na lang kulang. I can definitely identify with that statement. How about you, Nikki? What's it like for you seeing all of these comments?
Yeah, and the pandemic was hard enough on all of us that a lot of opportunities you imagine we would have this year, we didn't get to have, or a lot of our coping we had before, we don't have this year. So I've heard so many of these statements, not just now, but also from friends, from strangers, from from a lot of people, and I can really feel that we can all get down on ourselves. We can all be super critical of ourselves, and these things that we're telling ourselves, they do hurt. Sometimes I think for me, I've never heard statements that were so unkind as the statements that I've told myself. So if I were to resonate with some of these that I've told myself is, I think, at 18, I told myself this statement before. I'm a failure. I've not achieved anything I set for myself. I'm running out of time and chances. I'm getting old. I said that to myself at 18. And it's really like nobody else was saying it to me, but I was saying it to myself. And that made me feel really horrible. I think in this pandemic, what I've said to myself a lot is, or I think I've said to myself a lot, especially while watching the news, why are you so useless? Because a lot of people are suffering all around you. A lot of people are having a hard time. And I've told myself a couple of times, why aren't you doing anything? Why are you so useless? And those words are really harsh. How about you, Chloe? Which of these were, of everything that you said you resonated with? recently? Do you still say any of these
I
harsh
feel
things?
like the one thing I tell myself throughout my whole life is that that you're not doing enough. I feel like out of all, I beat myself up because I feel like I could have done more. Um, I always feel that there is more that I can do, and I get that that can be a growth mindset. But then sometimes it just really does hold me back from doing more. My intention in the first place. That's one of the statements that I found myself saying, which really eats at me. But I feel like I can get better at it.
I love how you pointed out that, hey, can this be a growth mindset that we can do better? But just, the subtle shift in wording. If instead of you're not doing enough, we told ourselves, hey, you can do better, it's not unkind anymore. It's still kind of capturing that there's more opportunities for growth, but it's not harsh. So even if your unkind statements, we recognize they have good intentions, because of the way that we word things, that it's very insulting, it's very negative, it gets down on us, it makes it very unkind. So even subtle word shifts, even in the subtle words that we use, it's what makes it really unkind.
Okay, so can we go back to the slides? Thanks for everyone for sharing that with us. I'm sure it must have been difficult to do that. So, like I said a while ago, what if instead of saying that nobody will be able to understand what I'm going through, we instead said, I am not alone and I can reach out. You know how many people forget that reaching out might be the first step to having a better life. I learned the hard way. And I definitely believe that once I grounded myself in that, I was able to do things better. At the same time, how about if we change that I'm never going to be good enough to I may not handle this right now, but I will in time. Sometimes we can't do everything in the moment, and sometimes we have to give ourselves time to handle it. Some people need more time to process emotions, other people know what to do right away, but it doesn't make us any less of a person. Yes, Patty, thanks for sharing that, the power of yet. I can't handle this yet. And recognizing that maybe in the future, when I have more personal resources, I may be able to do that. And what if we change our self absorption and telling ourselves, it's all my fault too? There are some things I cannot control, but I do what I can. We really just do what we can, especially with this pandemic where we feel like we're so responsible for everything going on. We have to recognize what is within our realm of control and be more forgiving of ourselves of the things we cannot change. But I guess you know what they say, you can't change everyone else, but then the person that you can work on is yourself. So with these three components, then we're able to better accept ourselves while we're in pain, and we can bear witness to ourselves and respond with kindness and understanding. When we accept ourselves while we're in that pain, we reduce that suffering and we learn to internalize the kindness that I mentioned a while ago. And I hope that we really just are able eventually to externalize that. But then right now, if focusing on yourself is what you can do, it doesn't make you any less. This time, a lot of people have spent the pandemic turning in, understanding themselves better. And I think over time, that's just going to make us the people who will be the trailblazers for what compassion really means. So does that mean that if I'm self-compassionate, that I'm selfish? No, it's not true. I think that there's that misconception that if we put boundaries, healthy boundaries between people, we have that tendency to say na, grabe ka naman, simple lang naman yung hiningi ko sa'yo. We're allowing ourselves to be unkind by not hearing ourselves out. And when we ground ourselves in reality, not just in how we think things are, aren't we being kinder to everyone around us because we're able to respond more rationally? We're able to respond with less emotional tones. And hopefully we can really just remind ourselves that just because you set those lines, it doesn't mean that I am not a kind person. You know, that hard thing of saying no, just saying no to someone about something or a favor that they might ask. That's one of the difficult things that I find hard doing, saying no to work, saying no to opportunities. But then sometimes, if we're trying to be kind to ourselves, recognizing that we can't do more is the best thing that we can do. And self compassion is not um, grounded in like this whole feeling of, yes, I should be so kind to myself. I should just let myself feel all these things. I am entitled to all of these things. It happens in stages of acceptance. We start from a stage where we feel like, wow, this idea is so amazing. But eventually, you know, we're going to go through a disillusionment where we have to accept that we have to respond with a realistic approach. And that's when true acceptance comes in. When we're able to choose actionable steps for us to be better. When we're able to identify our opportunities of growth, that's the kind of language we prefer to use instead of weaknesses. Our opportunities of growth become our foundations for self-compassion. And in the next segment, Nikki will talk to you how you'll be able to do that. So Nikki, I guess you can take the presentation from here.
Thanks, Chloe, for unpacking what compassion really is and how we can go through stages to get to that true acceptance. So we're going to talk more about how. So if we want to get to that true acceptance, this is what we want you to start practicing. So we're going to be talking about how can we start using self-compassion personally and at work. We're going to be teaching you an acronym that you can practice. Anytime you feel tempted to be unkind or criticizing or self-isolating to yourself. So I love how Hannah said here, like she said, I think as individuals, we are prone to self-criticism because we are too focused on achieving our goals and in trying to prove ourselves to others. That's so true, Hannah. Like when we're very results oriented, when we just look at the result and not the amount of effort that we put in the process, and we don't put in we don't see ourselves as people doing our best, and we all just see that we didn't reach our goal, then we can be really hard with ourselves. So this is something that you can practice instead of being very harsh to yourself, instead of just focusing on the outcome. It's face it. So just remember, if you're feeling like you're running out of self-compassion, just remember to face it. So imagine this situation. So imagine that since the pandemic, just try to empathize with this situation, okay? Imagine that since the pandemic, your income has been reduced, but more work has been given. You have people who rely on you at home and at work to make sure everything is functioning properly. So this is a lot. You can already try to imagine what are the unkind things you may be saying to yourself. What are the ways that you're resisting? I can feel that this is true. This has been true for a lot of people, that especially in a lot of workplaces that we even consulted with or did training for. Um, Somebody asked in the chat box if I wrote this about them. No, this isn't. No, this isn't. This is an imaginary situation, but I find that it's been true across a lot of people. So try to imagine that. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through that steps. We're going to face it. So F stands for feel the pain. A stands for accept it. C is compassionately respond, and E is expect skillful action. So we're going to go through this one by one. The first step is feel the pain. You know, sometimes we're so afraid of our emotions. We're actually not opening the door fully to it. And when the door, like imagine a closet and then your emotions are there in the dark. When it's in the dark, and maybe as a kid you can resonate, it it's so much scarier than it actually is, because you don't know how big it is. It's so the mystery of you not opening that door fully, of you not letting it in fully, makes it even scarier. So I don't know if you can relate. Let's say you made a mistake. Try to remember a time in your life where you made a mistake and you didn't want to tell anyone, and because of that guilt and you trying to hide that mistake and hiding that guilt, it ended up eating at you. Whereas if you just told that person or you just revealed that mistake to the light, maybe people would get mad for a minute, but then it's after that it's over, and then your guilt is gone and your shame is gone after that. So you can imagine, as a lot of people just shove their pain in the closet and they don't reveal it fully because they're too scared of what it actually is. But a lot of the times when we feel the pain, we realize, it's not as scary. And when we allow that, when we allow ourselves to really recognize it, it's not that monster. Sometimes it's not as scary as we thought. Fine, maybe it's not always as cute as this, but it's not as scary as when we were trying to keep it in the closet, trying not to look at it, trying to ignore it. When we were able to finally bring it to the light, when we feel the pain, it's not as bad as we actually think. It didn't kill us after all. So that's the first step. Feel the pain. So in this situation, um, your income has been reduced, you have more work, feel the pain. Na you're disappointed because you maybe had saving goals, maybe you wanted to give a gift to others and now you can't give it anymore. So it's okay to feel disappointed. Just feel that disappointment, recognize it, feel that you're working so much more for much less. So just feel it. And the next step is to accept it. So to accept it, there's going to be a softening, an allowing, and a labeling. So we're going to do this together. Let's start with a softening. And softening is really just recognizing that pain manifesting in our body and just letting it soften. So let's try to scan our bodies right now. Let's start with our head. Do you feel pain in your head sometimes? Or in that situation where you try to empathize, your job, your salary has been reduced, but your work has been increased. Do you feel your head hurting a bit? Do you feel it in your neck? Do you feel that your neck is tightening a bit right now? If it is, soften it. Now notice your shoulders. Are your shoulders tense? Are your shoulders tight? Do you notice that you're lifting your shoulders? When we deny our pain, our bodies reflect it. We can't fully deny something. Our bodies will be a tattletale and show to the world that this is where our pain is. So just allow it, recognize it, accept it, and then allow it to soften. So if it's in your shoulders, then just let your shoulders soften. Do you feel it in your heart? Is your heart palpitating more than it does? Like, do you feel like you ran a marathon or that you exercised, but you just sat at home the whole day? Maybe you feel it in your heart. Accept it and just soften. Try to soften it. Do you feel it in your stomach? Maybe do you sometimes get nauseous? Do you get stomach aches? Anxiety oftentimes manifests in LBM or diarrhea, stomach aches. That sometimes is a sign of anxiety, and it's because you're denying that feeling. Your body is the one that's screaming and giving all of the warning signs. Maybe you feel it in your legs. Your legs are tighter. Maybe you've been sitting wrongly and you just feel it in your lower back, and the pain extends in your legs. Maybe you feel it in your feet. Sometimes this happens to people too. So wherever you feel that pain in your body, accept it and just let that soften. And the next is allow. So try to imagine your pain now as a cloud that is passing by. You are not the cloud, you are the witness of that cloud. And it's your pain, your emotions, it's all just passing through. Some clouds are faster, maybe they're smaller, and some pain just and emotions, they just go through faster. But maybe you can recognize in yourself, maybe there are bigger pains in your life and it feels like a big, heavy cloud and it's taking its time to pass through. But just allow that big cloud to pass through. You can't hold on to it. It's not You are not the cloud. You are watching that cloud and you're watching that cloud pass through. Allow it to pass through. And the next stage of accepting it is labeling it. So a lot of times we repress our emotions so much that we actually cannot recognize our feelings anymore. How can you be good at recognizing your feelings if your whole life you told yourself, you shouldn't be feeling this is not a nice feeling, this feeling is bad, this you shouldn't have bad feelings, you should only have happy feelings. So in that way your sensor or your radar for feelings, it's so off because if you've denied your feelings a lot of times, then what what happens is you don't recognize your feelings anymore. So one thing you can do is um, focus on, like, you can even use this wheel and just look at what are you feeling right now. So you can start from this outer part. Maybe I'll focus on, let's say what I'm feeling is somewhere here. I'm looking down, or maybe there are days when I'm just curled up in my bed, or my team knows I cry a lot sometimes. Or, like, for instance, what I feel right now is a heaviness in my chest. If I can just feel something here, I notice it, I did the body scan, I feel a heaviness in my chest, and maybe that's a sign that I'm lonely. And that's really like a nuanced emotion of sadness. So I recognize that I am sad. So we have a question here in the chat box. Jerome said, what is one healthy thing I can do to support myself when I'm sad or stressed out? So Jerome, it's first I want to acknowledge right now that you already have that this initial step in. You were already able to label your emotion, that you were sad and stressed out. So that's a really great step along the process already. We'll go back to your question through this series of steps. But I just want to point out, for you to already know your feeling, that's already such a great step towards this process. So you can use this wheel. So you can sometimes, if you can't identify your emotion, then go through the whole wheel and recognize where are you right now, so that you can pinpoint your emotion and acknowledge it. So again, this is the situation: pandemic, less money, more work, people still relying on you. The next letter is letter C. For face it's letter C. Let's compassionately respond. So try to bear witness to your own pain and respond with kindness and understanding. Instead of being harsh, instead of isolating yourself or being self-absorbed, let's just respond with kindness. So we invite you to respond to these statements with either a yes or a no. And we're going to show some statements to you, and we're going to actually unmute everyone right now. So hopefully you'll participate. So if you can, you just say yes or no. So for I'm going to get through this. Say yes or no.
Yes.
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 I love that. I love how people are screaming, yes, I'm going to get through this. You know, people get this. People have darkness is quiet. It can be loud. Yes, you said it. I'm going to get through this.
Yes.
This one, I am a disappointment.
No.
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 No, I want that no to be louder.
No.
No.
No. So self-compassion is not just a quiet thing. It can be assertive. It can be like, I'm a disappointment. No, that's not true. So you reject that. I'm fully responsible for my job loss in that situation. It's a pandemic and you're
No.
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 no, tough circumstances.
No.
No, no.
Use this time to find yourself.
Yes.
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 This
Yes.
one. I'm never going to get a job again.
Yes.
No.
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 No, no, no.
You're never going to get a job again. No.
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 No, no.
I want you to be really assertive with your no's, okay? So self-compassion is very assertive as well. It's
No.
say no, it's no. No, it's not true. It's not true that I'm never going to get a job. So good job, everyone. How about this one? I can grow from this.
Yes.
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 Super yes.
Here, have some confidence when you say it. So
Yes.
that's imagine again this situation. So we're going. Thank you everyone for participating in that exercise. You know, I can really feel the energy and I just want to emphasize again. Sometimes you think self-compassion is just quiet and not loud, but actually self-compassion can be really assertive. Self-compassion is not just you can do it. It's you can do it. Self-compassion is not no, I'm not stupid. It's no, no, I'm not stupid. It's not true that I'm never gonna get a job again. You can be really assertive with your yes and with your no for all the things in your head that you're for all the times you're being unkind to yourself. Let this other side of you take control and gain more assertiveness. You say no whenever you're hearing all of these Mentimeter statements you said earlier about you not being good enough or you being too old to improve, being too old to find yourself, whenever you catch yourself saying those things, be assertive, say no. That's not true. So allow your self-compassion to be strong. Let your no to those unkind statements be loud and clear. Let yourself hear it loud and clear. And lastly, for face it, expect skillful action. So in this situation that perhaps for some of us, our pay was decreased and there's more work to do. Maybe instead of saying I'm not good enough or like I deserve this pay cut or like I'm not doing much with my life, why don't you expect skillful action? What you can actually do in that situation is you can upskill, reskill, or cross skill. So if you still want to improve in that job, upskill. There's always going to be something to learn. There's always going to be something to improve about yourself so you can upskill. Or maybe your old, where you used to work, or that current industry, you can feel that it's a dying industry. Maybe it's not as relevant anymore in a pandemic or in a more advanced technological age. You can reskill. You can learn new skills. Or you could even cross skill. Just boost all of your skills in your current work, in your perhaps next work that you're looking at. Be a jack of all trades and try to get and acquire as many skills as you can, and that will be a better response than just being unkind to yourself. So expect skillful action. So these are the 4 steps. It's face it. It's first is feel the pain. Just don't be scared of that pain. When you let it through the door, the monster is not as scary as you think sometimes. And accept it. So recognize that emotion, feel it in your body, label it. Is it sadness? Is it joy? Accept it. And then next, compassionately respond. So all of those times where you're saying, you've said unkind things in your head, it was an automatic process, maybe it was a habit, then just say no to all of those unkind statements. And whenever anyone pays you a compliment, say, yes, thank you. I'm trying to do my best. You can say things like that. And last, depending on the situation, expect skillful action. Do your best to do the next best thing for yourself. So whether if it's in a job situation, upskill, reskill. If you made a mistake, then maybe ask for forgiveness. If you If you want to achieve a new thing in your life, then why don't you start making your steps towards that next business or that next job or that next hobby or that next sport? Just do your best to make your next step very intentional and towards your goals, and just apply that skillful action. So don't forget, anytime that you feel that you're not being self-compassionate, just face it. So that's the end of that learning part of our webinar today. We're now going to open the floor to some questions. So if you have questions, you can definitely type it here in the chat box. So this was our learning roadmap for today. Why is acceptance the center of sustainable compassion? When you accept yourself, when you have self-compassion, you will actually have more to give to others. You cannot give from an empty well. If you want to be able to be compassionate to others, that has to start with you. And next, what are the components of self-compassion? You saw that you have to be kind to yourself and not criticize yourself. You saw that you have to be mindful. You saw that you have to have a common humanity. Those are the components of self-compassion. And lastly, how can you start using self-compassion at work, in your personal life? For any time you feel that you're getting mean to yourself or you're not as kind to others and to yourself, maybe it's a self-compassion issue. So practice, face it. So practice, feel the pain, accept it, compassionately respond, and expect skillful action. And before we go, we'd love to hear, what did you learn from this? You can go to menti.com, either scan that or go here, and we'd love to know. What is your main takeaway from today? So you can type your takeaways here, and you can also type your questions in the chat box. You're looking at the chat box, and Chloe and I are here. We're happy to take in more questions. Maybe we can start with a question that was posed earlier, Chloe. Do you want to add something to that? What can you do to respond to that feeling of sadness or stress? What's your recommendation, Chloe?
I feel like one of the most critical things I've realized is that allowing myself to just feel it out. You know, sometimes it takes me 30 minutes. Sometimes I get over it in a day, but then I'm just so much more stronger to use the resources I already have to respond properly once I've let myself feel those things, which is kind of really leaning into that pain, like what self-compassion is really trying to tell us to do. So I think it's Jerome who asked that question, right? My best advice for you is to not say that you're not allowed to feel those things. Just feel it. And eventually you'll get to the point where you're ready to face it. You're really going to get to the point where you have people around you who are helping you face it also. And you'll eventually process it well.
Yeah. Yeah, I love, Jerome, I love that you were able to recognize your feelings. One of my favorite poems by Rumi is, your being human is like a guest house. Every day a new guest comes in, it's a new emotion coming in. And all of these guests, these emotions, that feeling of sadness, that feeling of stress, they're actually there to teach you something. So I love that you know you're feeling, because now that you have that sadness, then you can inquire, what is making me sad right now? Maybe there's a value that you have that is not being met. Maybe you're stressed because you put on too much on yourself and you're expecting too much of yourself. So actually have a dialogue with those emotions, and that's the emotions themselves will give you a clue about how you can respond with self-compassion. So if you're sad, and it really depends on what it is, but sometimes if you're sad, maybe what your body is telling you is you need to rest because you lost something and you need some time to grieve. If you're feeling stressed, maybe what your body is telling you is you need some time to rest and unwind and go back to the things that energize you. So your emotions, they're your best teachers. Have a dialogue with it and allow them to teach you to live a better life. Yeah. Chloe, which of these takeaways do you want to highlight right now?
Let's see. Okay, I feel like this was such a strong statement above, growing from your pain and suffering. I I I feel like that is how I've lived my life. Oh, I'm getting emotional. But it's really because when life isn't fair and you see that your pain can be such a space for you to grow. And when you allow yourself that opportunity to grow, that's when you really just flourish. And I wasn't always like this. I wasn't always kind to myself or people in general. But when I channeled my suffering into doing good work, I feel like I found so much more purpose and so much more grounding that I think I've grown so much in such a small amount of time. And seeing everyone here in the room really like take that in is really powerful for me. I guess it's an affirmation that there is really strength in kindness. And what I used to tell people is that kindness is not fake. It's it's something that we can institutionalize. It's something that we can make into a system. It's something that's so real that we need to have more of in our everyday lives. And seeing that there's someone in the room, even if it's just one person who can say that they know now that they can grow from suffering, at least you can step away from this and then tell yourself that you'll be better, you'll do better. Oh, I'm getting emotional. I
Thanks.
guess that's what I have from that. Yeah.
Thank you for that vulnerability, Chloe. And I really, I like, for me, Chloe is actually like a teacher to me in that sense that no matter what life throws at you, you can grow from it, but you won't be able to grow from it without being self-compassionate first. So I love that someone was able to take that away from this webinar. That's amazing. For me, I really resonate with what this person said, that just always be kind to yourself, or like that birthplace of compassion is prioritizing yourself, because you are the steward of your own life. Before you worry about the whole world and everyone else, make sure that you yourself are okay, and you will be able to have more to give to others. So it's following that metaphor of in the plane, before you give oxygen to somebody else, give that oxygen to yourself. And when you're able to breathe and have that air, there's so many more people that you can help after. Because if you pass out first, there's nobody else. There's nobody else that you can help, and you cannot help yourself. So it's not selfish. It's not wrong to prioritize yourself. That's a takeaway that I really resonate with, and I really am. See, this is the one. Like, make yourself a priority. Imagine if we all made ourselves a priority, then we wouldn't be like dwindling out and like suffering so much. If we just took care of ourselves, give that care to ourselves. It's not selfish. In fact, when you take care of yourself, there's a wellspring of compassion that can flow to others. Yes. So do we have any questions on the chat box?
Yeah, na-compose ko na yung self ko.
Good job, Chloe. Yeah, what do you guys think about Chloe's great design? It's so good. But I want to read out some comments here. Noralyn said she's sharing some wisdom with us. Rejection is God's protection. When someone rejects or breaks you, it may be a blessing in disguise. So that's true. Maybe there was an opportunity. Maybe you deserve better than that person who rejected you or broke you. Maybe it's really a sign that there's somebody else who can take care of you better. Dennis said, I feel like my friends and I always speak about feeling guilty and lash out at others and ourselves. How do you return to kindness and compassion?
Mickey, could you read that again? You cut off a little.
Oh, sorry. Dennis said, I feel like my friends and I always speak about feeling guilty in moments of weakness, when we are unmindful of our emotions and lash out at others and ourselves. So his question is, how do you return to kindness and compassion when you slip up? So what's your thought, Chloe?
I just stopped. when I feel like I'm already about to say something unkind or I am not in the headspace to respond kindly at all, I just stop and let myself not think. I think in one of our other sessions, we give some acronyms about how to do that. But I feel like once you've already slipped, though, so I guess let's take the situation that you slipped already, you said something unkind. At the end of every day, what I do is I set some time for me to think about how I've been kind to myself. And I process the words that I used to speak to myself, and then I rephrase them. What I do with a lot of people who I love so dearly is when they've said something unkind, I say, I'm going to give you one more chance to rephrase how you said that because I feel like that's not how you meant it. And I feel once I was able to do that with the people I loved, I was able to do that more for myself. So, just maybe giving people a second chance to edit and undo would make such a big difference and you'll really hear them more. And when you do that to yourself, you're less likely to slip up. And it's not a slip up. It's so easy to tell yourself, whoops, mali, delete, 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 redo. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, if you can give other people that chance to edit and redo, you should also give yourself that chance. So, for instance, you slipped up and you said something mean to another person or something very harsh to yourself. Um, First, actually, like, be brave enough to admit that I think I slipped up, or I think that was a moment where I was not mindful. So sometimes we feel so guilty that we just try to banish that feeling. We put that monster behind the door. But if we just admit it, I think I slipped up, go to that person and say, you can be safe. You can say, I think I slipped up, and I'm gonna use your words, Dennis. That you can say, I want to return. I want to be kind, but I think I slipped up, or I want to be as kind as I used to be, but I think I made a series of mistakes here. And you can apologize, say sorry. You can even involve that person in asking, how can you be, how can you make amends? But I think the bigger thing that I want to also say is, for me, sometimes being unkind to others is probably, when I'm unkind to others, there's probably a block in me, a lack of self-compassion in me. Because I really feel like the world is abundant with love. There's so many people in the world who love you, who see good things in you, who want to take care of you, but there are times in your life when you block it. So there are times in your life when you're very not compassionate, you feel like you don't deserve that love, you cut everyone off, and that's when you act up and become mean to others. So if you're aware of those blocks that you put into receiving the love and kindness of others, dissolve it. And if you feel like, for instance, if you feel like you made a mistake and you don't want to turn that to go to that person because you feel that person won't forgive you, dissolve that block, go to that person, ask for forgiveness, do your best to return to that old way and just communicate about it. Yeah. Thank you, Dennis. We have Teresa said, my takeaway is be happy and enjoy life, enrich spiritual readings, and develop a close relationship to my family, others, and divine creators. So I love this. If your spirituality is a source of self-compassion for you, Teresa, then keep turning to it, because if that is where you draw your strength, then you will have more to give to others. And if your close relationships as well is where you draw your strength, then keep doing that so you can have more to give to others. Are there any more questions?
Maybe we can ask if they have actual questions because I think they thought it was a takeaway. I think right now you guys can just send in some questions to us. You can private message it to me or Nikki if there's something that you need to understand better, or maybe you have something going on and wala, alam mo naman baka mamaya maging chika of advice here, but take the time. We have some time for that.
Yeah, so if you don't want your name to be revealed, as Chloe said, send it privately and we won't read your name out. Or if you even want to raise your hand and be unmuted, go for it. We'll unmute you. I guess if there's no question right now, before to warm everyone up, my question, Chloe, is you said earlier that there's stages of self-compassion and you can start with infatuation. And I feel like right now, maybe people feel, wow, self-compassion is amazing. What are some instances where we can get disillusioned by self-compassion that you think that after this, people might go into that next stage of disillusionment? What might that look like, Chloe?
I used to be this way, where I thought that being kind to myself meant just letting myself be the most toxic person in the world. I was like, yeah, but this is me. I have to love myself as I am. But when you step into that, if you're still in that disillusionment, you're not going to realize that you are being unkind. You're eventually gonna have to get to a point to know how you affect people, that you are part of a common humanity and you are not isolated. The way that you respond to people might not affect you right now, and you'll forget about it a few moments later, but just that snarky remark could ruin someone's day. So I guess that disillusionment phase typically looks like that. And maybe if you're on the infatuation stage and you're just kind of absorbing or warming up to the idea of being kind, just know that this is just grounding yourself in reality and giving yourself such a chance to fight for humanity also. Fight for a place for that compassion to exist. Then that's how you can sort of push yourself towards true acceptance. Yeah.
Yeah, I love how you pointed that out, Chloe. Na the next step for some people who really didn't internalize what we shared here is it could look like ganito ako, therefore tanggapin nyo na lang ako like this. But I think the more self-compassionate advice that Chloe is saying is, you can still grow and become better. So I think the fake compassion is ganito ako, I'm annoying, I'm mean, accept me. Versus like, I'm starting off this way, but I think I could be better. We have some questions here right now, Chloe. Are you ready for them?
Ready.
Someone said privately, hello, whenever I feel my anxiety, it makes me hard to fall asleep. So I have to keep myself doing something or I'll eventually or I'll eventually feel tired. Oh, so they'll do something like jogging or jumping jacks inside the house. Can I ask for some advice to fight this anxiety so I don't have to be so hard on myself?
I'm going to say one thing, and it's that you're coping well. The fact that you're choosing to exercise and, get that energy out of yourself, that's almost the ideal thing that a therapist will tell you to do. Exercise, do some work, and you're responding well right now. But if you feel like those techniques aren't working for you, personally, what I do is I play rain sounds. I just play rain sounds and I close my eyes and I blank my mind. And there are a lot of guided meditations that you can find online that can help you do that if just the background sound isn't going to help you get there. But I think mindfulness is such a great space to start that. Actually, this whole self-compassion thing comes from authors like Christine Neff and others, but it's grounded in Buddhist philosophy. And a lot of it is grounded in meditation. So I hope that answers your question. How about you, Nikki?
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback on that answer of Chloe. First of all, we want to say that if you're really feeling some disturbing levels of anxiety, it's not wrong to go to a psychologist. Getting that professional help. I really think people, you're worth it. You're worth that money. You're worth that investment. So if you're feeling that the discomfort is beyond you, please open yourself up to seeing a psychologist. But I guess just our layman's advice right now, I want to pick up on what Chloe said on mindfulness. I think there were also just my personal take on this is there were also so many times in my life where I was so anxious that I couldn't sleep. And it's really the worst feeling when you're so tired, but you still can't fall asleep, it's because your mind is rushing with all of these fears that might happen. Or sometimes I even tell myself, like, if I just fall asleep forever, it's fine because I don't want to wake up the next day. I'm so anxious. But when I started practicing mindfulness, and mindfulness is just being aware of my emotions and my thoughts and not judging it. So if I'm observing a thought, then I just look at it, and like traffic or a cloud passing by, just let it rush through. It takes time to build that mindfulness practice, but when I did build it up, I didn't have that overwhelming level of anxiety in my life ever again. So if your anxiety is coming from judging yourself, mindfulness is a great practice that you can take to help you slowly build up, not judging yourself, not judging others, not judging the world for whatever is happening. And you might get some better sleep after that.
So
Yeah,
we
so
have, I also have some questions here, Nikki. I think a common theme that people are feeling right now during the entire, during this entire pandemic is that guilt that I can't give more help. And, we sort of feel guilty that we can't do more. Um, and I don't know, Nikki, I know that you're a yes person also. You can relate. And I am a yes person too, because I will do as much as I can for as long as I can. But I think you can read up on healthy boundaries in how, okay, for example, personally, I dive, and you cannot help someone swim up if they're drowning if you have weights around your hips yourself. You'll both end up drowning at the end of the day. So maybe if a part of your brain is telling yourself that you can't help right now, then maybe, just maybe, letting them know that you're unable to help them right now and redirecting them to people who can, or maybe helping is just listening. I think that's another framework that Art is talked about in one of our older webinars, that help is not always giving your hand. Sometimes it's just hearing them out, and that makes such a world of difference for so many people.
yeah. I think I want to go back to another point that was made earlier in this webinar, that compassion fatigue can result from you believing that you are indispensable. So it doesn't mean that somebody asks for your help, that you are the only person that can help that person. So even if you said no, that person can look for, there's billions of people in the world. There's so many other people that that person can turn to. And I think it's better if that person got help from someone who has the space and the energy to help than someone like you at this time who doesn't have the energy to help. So that help will feel even more empowering if it comes from a willing person. So it might even be a kind thing that you're saying no. Know that you're not indispensable. You're not the only Messiah here. You're not the Messiah here. There are other people who can help as well. So you can say no.
We have one more question here, shared in public. Sometimes being kind to yourself seems like being selfish. How can I distinguish it? Okay, that's so difficult to do. But how I ground myself personally to know if I'm being selfish or not is if I am ready to give that help also. I think it mirrors similarly to that guilt thing. Now we think we're selfish because we're not able to reach out. But sometimes, like what Nikki mentioned a while ago, we might just not really be able to do that right now. And there are other people who might be able to help them. I think that's one good way, that using the word that I am selfish is already you saying that you're unkind. But then, I believe that the people in this room cannot be like that, because you would not have spent the past hour with us trying to learn this if that were really true. So just give yourself the benefit of the doubt. How about you, Nikki, on that question?
I think you would kind of know. I think it's more an inner feeling, which I don't think is very helpful right now. But I guess what I just want to say is, you are as important as everybody else. So if you would help another person and give this other person that time, you should also learn to do that for yourself. So weigh it in. Like I said a while ago, I resonate with that person who said prioritize yourself. If you're sleep deprived, if you don't have the time, if you have so much work to do, and then everyone else is demanding more of you, it's okay to prioritize yourself. You're just as important as everyone else. You can get what you need to do done first. That's not selfish. When I think what would be selfish is if you've fully taken care of yourself, you have everything that you need, and yet you don't want to extend even a little bit of yourself to others, then that's selfish. But if you still need to take care of yourself, then by all means, take that time. You're just as important as everybody else. You deserve your own time too. So that's not selfish.
Nikki, someone sent a question to me. I think it more relates to attachment fatigue. Now, what if it's February, it's the month love month, so of course we're going to sort of tackle this in the Q&A. But someone asked, what if I am in a relationship with someone and it's not allowing me to take care of myself anymore? I'm sort of putting them first. What do I do now? Who will save me? So Nikki, I guess, how do you feel like you would most healthily respond to this situation?
Oh my goodness. Or we answering love questions in a workplace. But I think romantic relationships entail reciprocity. So you should be able to get back from it as much as you give. You're helping you're accompanying that person, but that other person should also accompany you and respond to your needs as well. So if it's a two-way thing, then stay. If it's not, if it's just always one way, then I don't think that's a healthy relationship. I don't know if I'm answering it right, Chloe.
My advice is hear out the people around you. Like what you said, you are not believing that you're indispensable, and believing that you might be the only person who can help him might not be true. If the people around you who really do truly care for you are steering you towards a different direction, give them the benefit of the doubt that it might be true. That's the best advice that I can say, that because in all my experiences, family, friends, they see things that we don't. So they're being compassionate to you when they're responding to you as you share these stories to them. Maybe giving them the benefit of the doubt that it might be time to save yourself instead. So we have Sir Akim who wants to unmute himself right now to ask a question. So I'll ask you to unmute. Hello. Hello po. Ask to unmute. Okay, I'm guessing he does not want to. Okay, it's okay.
That's not correct if that was just a mistake. But I think we have time for just 2 more questions here on the chat box.
For those who are looking for more reference materials regarding self-compassion, if you Google the author Christine Neff and Google selfcompassion.org, I think they have a bunch of material that you can refer to, with a K, right?
Oh,
Kristine. Or you can just look for self-compassion and you're going to find an abundance of material on this. They've done research actually, and this is backed up by many research, and self-compassion in itself is a method. I'm not quite sure yet if it's a theory, but it's a method of approach. How about you, Nikki? Have you read? So I heard you told me that you were reading up on journals on this.
Oh, it's Neff. I've always loved her work and her framework. Yeah. So she organizes them so well on her website. So check it out.
For this next question, I feel like people in the call may have some understanding of self-love and positivity through positive workplaces, how do you introduce the concept of self-compassion to a person who hasn't done any of the work themselves? How are you guys so wise? Well, you already did the first step. You attended today. That's like the biggest step, just giving yourself an opportunity to be exposed to this. I don't think we're taught this in school. We're not told these things specifically, but that's why we do the work that we do in positive workplaces to encourage people to do this kind of work. But how do I introduce this to people who are not familiar with it? I introduce it to them by showing them who I am as a person. And I get asked so often, I kid you not, how are you being so forgiving? Or how are you responding so kindly to this person? Or how are you able to take that situation in? And just by telling them my story of how I got to this point where I'm able to be so kind to myself and so forgiving of others and not be grounded in anger, they're more likely to take it in than if I said, okay, let's sit down, bring out the book, and then I'm going to lecture everything for you guys. People respond to stories more strongly than they do to lectures. Yeah, that's what I guess I can say for that. How about you, Nikki?
So there's a siren here. But, I'm gonna sorry, I'll let it pass. I'm gonna combine my answer to that with also what Teresa asked: is self-compassion acquired or innate? So my response also to the previous question is, okay, so first I'll respond to Teresa's question. Self-compassion cannot be learned without role models. So if a person, like if we've known this from like social studies, like if a person is isolated from the rest of the world, they will not learn empathy, they will not learn compassion. Of course, they wouldn't learn self-compassion. So these intricate things you learn from how you socialize with others. So you acquire it from your environment as well. But from all of the readings that you do, you can definitely deepen your knowledge and your skill for self-compassion. And I think that's how I would respond to this other question as well. If this person has never done any work on themselves, and you can't force them to go to a webinar, you can't force them to read a book, they're resistant of it, then the best thing that you can do is to be that role model that they didn't have for self-compassion. So show this person what it looks like to be self-compassionate by being self-compassionate around this person. Or if show this person kindness as well. If this person is being mean to themselves, you can say, I think otherwise of you. If this person is saying, I think I'm alone in this, then tell that person, no, you're never alone. Everyone is going through something difficult like this. You're never alone. So just be that role model of self-compassion, and maybe that's the first step. Just help make that person more curious about what you're doing and how you are. But be that role model. So I think that's the time that we have for today. We'll be posting the Evels link for you to be able to get a certificate from this. And we just want to say that we do have a couple of leadership trainings coming up. So the Adaptive Leadership course is on February 20 and 27 with Coach Lippy, who has been training leaders for a long, long time. He's a very experienced coach, and he's so passionate about helping equip leaders, especially during this time that everything is changing. So if you're interested in that, please sign up for that course. More details are on our Facebook page. Or if you're interested in emotional intelligence leadership course, you're a better leader if you have that emotional intelligence. This is with our collaborator, Kay Valderon, who's a psychologist that's very well known. So if you're interested in that, please sign up for that course. And lastly, we want to thank you. And if you enjoyed this content, we actually come up with 3 free webinars every month. So our other webinars are this. So we just finished Self-Compassion. Next week, on February 16, it's going to be Kay Valderon talking about emotional intelligence. And on February 24, it's going to be Ross talking about strengthening teams through appreciation. So any last word? We hope to see you there. Please follow our Facebook page to get more updates on these free webinars. We come up with 3 free ones every month, and we're so happy to do this for our community. Any last words from you, Chloe?
So I guess I'd like to thank everyone also in the room for taking the time. You've extended so much. We're like almost 10 minutes over time. And I hope you keep joining us and be the people also who champion for these things and show them that this can be done. Just keep joining us in our sessions. Please like and share our page. Invite more people to be champions. Tell them to like our page and follow our content. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. And before we go, I just want to give that, I just want to acknowledge Chloe's work. She's really our advocate for self-compassion and putting this type of webinar out. She's our main designer. So if you enjoyed this webinar, it's really because of Chloe's work. So please give her some love in the chat. If you appreciated something, do tell her. And thank you everyone for being here. We wouldn't have this community or this space without you. So you being vulnerable, sharing all of these moments when you were unkind to yourself, you made people in this room feel like they're not alone. So thank you so much for your participation today, and we'll look forward to having you in our next webinars. Bye.
Yes, there is feedback in the survey. So if you'd like to give us feedback or if you'd like to give us some messages, you can leave that in the evaluation also. And if there's anything that you guys want to learn more about, please tell us so that we can make more content for you guys to learn from. Thank you.
Thank you and bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you po.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you po.
coming.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Sir Cortero.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tay.
Saan pa nga ba? Ano pa?